In conclusion, what's next personally in this field for you? Next projects?
Well, I'm currently involved in three different projects that are interesting. We're going to build a museum in Boston on the Boston Commons. And the issue that we're wrestling with is not how to tell the story of the Holocaust in that museum, but how do we relate it to the American story of revolution, which is part of the ethos. I follow a principle in every museum I do, which is the place from which you remember an event shapes how you remember it. So in Washington, we remember the story one way, in New York, another. In New York, you have to deal with immigration. In Washington, you have to deal with government. In Budapest, you have to deal with the Hungarian experience. In Jerusalem, you have to deal with what has this done to Jews and the like. In Boston, we have to deal with America. But one of the interesting things is we're not sure what America is going to be like in 2025 when we open. So it causes us a reflection of what do we say of the story that shapes it and relates it to America. And we're playing with different ideas. One of the ideas we're playing with is an interesting idea, and I mention it because maybe somebody who will listen to this program will have a better idea than we have. One of the ideas we're having is, what about America made survivors comfortable in rebuilding their lives here? What did they expect of America, and what did they find in America that allowed them to rebuild it in a very basic way? The second project I have is in Bucharest, and the third project I have is in the Warsaw Ghetto, which is we're rehabilitating a building, an original hospital building in the Warsaw Ghetto, tell the story of the Warsaw Ghetto Museum. And next week I'm going to be part of a presentation of a movie that we did called Reckoning on the grappling between Germany and the Jewish people over the question of reparations, what Germany called Wiedergutmachung, and all that it represented in the controversy, because no less a figure than Menachem Begin called it absolution. And yet, in a very real respect, it was the means by which Germany rejoined the family of nations, and a good Germany rejoined the family nations, and by which survivors got originally the capacity to rebuild their lives with a certain measure of dignity, and now in old age, the capacity to come to the end of their lives with also a certain measure of dignity. And yet, in a very interesting way, it will falsify for history the nature of survivors, because when you go through the historical record, survivors, to get reparations, had to have a medical examination which showed wounds, by the way, physical or psychological, and consequently we're going to see them as wounded instead of seeing some other capacity, which is the incredible character strength, will it took in order to survive. So we represent all of the ambiguity and all of the struggle over the question of reparations and what that represents. And that's one of the reasons that, I'm not contemplating retirement. and B, that I find everything that I touch in this field of enduring interest.
This has been absolutely fascinating, and unfortunately our time is up. Dr. Berenbaum, thank you so much. Again, urge all our listeners and viewers, see those in the United States, those visiting Washington, D.C., to obviously visit the museum, and encourage all of them to purchase the book, which is so important. Dr. Berenbaum, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for having me.